U idealnom društvu pisci bi ostali bez posla, kaže jedan od najnagrađivanijih savremenih engleskih autora Ijan Makjuan. U nekoj izmaštanoj zemlji u kojoj bi se svi ljudi lepo ophodili i u kojoj ne bi bili izloženi moralnim izazovima, pisci ne bi bili potrebni. I upravo etička pitanja i isčašenja koje iscrtavaju ne uvek jasnu liniju između morala i nemorala, predstavljaju plodno tle za Makjuanovu prozu. Tako autor svoje junake izlaže raznovrsnim pritiscima, udarima istorije, igrama sudbine, zamkama slučaja, zabludama, nesporazumima, posle kojih više ništa u životu ne može biti isto.
Novels are long, they modulate as they go along. Suddenly you reach what you think of as a set piece. And the prose has to shift, there has to be a pulse, there's a sort of drum beating. Some of those set pieces that I've written, I write just in one go, maybe, into the night, to this pulse of urgency. So I look forward to those moments.
Ijan Makjuan rođen je 1948. u Aldershotu na jugu Engleske. Detinjstvo provodi na Bliskom Istoku i u Aziji, a zatim se vraća u Veliku Britaniju gde završava studije književnosti. Prvu zbirku kratkih priča, Prva ljubav, poslednji obredi, objavljuje 1975. Paradoksalno postaje poznat 80. godina prošlog veka kad BBC zabranjuje prikazivanje njegove drame Geometrija prostora zbog njene navodne opscenosti. Zatim piše Između čaršafa, Betonski vrt i Uteha stranca, romane koji mu zbog mračne i tegobne atmosfere donose nepretarano laskavu titulu Ijan Makjuan, u slobodnom prevodu Ijan jezivi. Sa naslovom Dete u vremenu otpočinje Makjuanova druga faza u kojoj su prisutne teme društvenog angažmana i usuda istorije, koji kulminira u romanu Crni psi. 1998. kratki roman Amsterdam biva ovenčan Bukerovom nagradom. Sledi Iskupljenje, koje se smatra jednim od remek dela savremene engleske i svetske književnosti. Njegovi kultni naslovi su između ostalih Istrajna ljubav, Subota i Čezil Beach. Svoj novi roman Orahova ljuska Ijan Makjuan je potpisivao u Beogradu za vreme velike međunarodne konferencije posvećene Džonu Apdajku, koju je svečano otvorio i na kojoj je bio počasni gost.
I'm really happy to meet you in Belgrade, so thank you for coming.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here.
What I like very much in our novels, one of the things, is that children are often your main heroes. Child in Time, which is the title of one of your novels, could also be the subtitle of the great part of your work. So how did children enter your literature?
They entered my literature by entering my life, really. And of course, I was a child, and I still remember it very strongly. It's interesting, children in literature, how long it took for world literature to take children seriously. And we don't really see children as characters in fiction, maybe with Dickens a little bit, Joyce, James Joyce famously. And then only slowly, I think in the 20th century, does the mind of the child begin to look so different from the mind of the adult. I saw a man who was famous for taking psychedelic drugs, and he said, if you want to know what it's like to take LSD, have breakfast with a 4-year-old. And I thought, why? Because they have a distributed consciousness, that floats freely in association. So I think it's fascinating for me to have this separate kind of consciousness that could give an eye on the adult world, and also provide a place for a novelist to locate himself, stand behind that child, and look through that child's eyes at the strangeness of adult life.
Yes, but the moment of stepping into the world of adults could be very traumatic.
Yes, it can be traumatic, it could be joyful, and sometimes a child witnesses things that are completely incomprehensible, or around which the child builds a mythology that is entirely mistaken. And this is really the plot of my novel, Atonement. I mean, my youngest hero is probably a fetus of 38 weeks.
Yes, in your latest novel, your hero, your narrator, is perhaps the youngest in all of literature.
Maybe.
He is a child about to be born. So why did you choose that perspective?
Well, you know, I was at a very boring meeting once where I had to... People were looking at me. There were cameras in front of me. There were proceedings going on in a language I didn't understand. And it was going on for many hours. And suddenly, like a message, like a ticker tape, I saw a sentence, and it said, so, comma, here I am, upside down, in a woman. And I thought, who the hell is this? Who is this woman, and who is this voice? But I knew also that it was like a little gift, because already I was curious of what I'd posed for myself. So it was a fetus, and because at that time I'd been giving a lecture on Hamlet, Hamlet was very much on my mind.
So you borrowed the plot for Shakespeare?
Shakespeare was very much on my mind. And then I thought, well, a fetus has one thing in common with Hamlet. He cannot act. Hamlet is incapable of doing anything to avenge his father's death. My character, my fetus, 38 weeks old, by definition, can do nothing. So the plot of Hamlet kind of drifted into this story. And there was another element too, which was I've spent a lot of my writing life working in the realist tradition. And with this sentence, I suddenly thought, I'm no longer going to research. I'm just going to stay at home and unfold this fantasy of a strange narrator who thinks that he's very old. I mean, he's almost born. He was once very small. In his youth, he was spinning around in this womb. Now he's cramped up. He's upside down. He feels, you know, that it's a useful question. Is there life after birth? He thinks there probably is. He's free to speculate about the world. He listens to podcasts. He hears radio. He listens to his mother's conversation. He listens to the murder plot that she's making against his father.
In his early age, he has very bad news about human nature.
He has a little of both. So he sees all kinds of problems that we face: climate change, overpopulation, terrorism, nationalism, all the kinds of problems that humankind have brought upon themselves. But at the same time, he knows that people are living longer, literacy levels are rising, more people are coming out of poverty. It's possible to live in a country in the north of Europe and eat oranges in winter, and that life for many people is getting better. So he's already overwhelmed by the complexity. All these good things and all these terrible things are all coming towards him at once.
But is this world the place he wants to live in?
He's eager to join. He thinks of the 21st century as a book that he's just about to start reading. He knows that when the century ends, he'll be 85 years old, and he will have read this book, the story of the 21st century. Will it survive without an exchange of nuclear weapons? It's an open question.
Kako je moguće da ja, još ne ni mlad, još ne ni tek rođen, mogu toliko toga znati? Ili mogu znati dovoljno da oko toliko stvari već nisam u pravu? Imam ja svoje izvore. Ja slušam. Moja majka trudi. Kad nije sa svojim dečkom Klodom, voli da sluša radio. Vođen porivom da navodim samom sebi, pomno pratim analize i debate. Ni reprize na svakih sat vremena nisu dosadne. Usred neke duge, tihe noći mogao bih ja majku dobro i da ritnem. Ona će se probuditi, neće moći da zaspi, posegnuće za radio. Surov je taj sport, znam, ali kad zora svane, oboje smo bolje informisani nego što smo bili.
Let's say a word about your childhood. Did you like it? What were you like as a kid?
Very shy, very pale, very shy. When I say shy, I really mean shy.
How did you stop getting shy?
Actually, I stopped getting shy by having to do this, to talk about myself or appear in public. So in my 20s, when I gave my first reading in America, I read from some story I'd just written. And nobody knew that it was the first time I'd ever read from my work. And I was so nervous that every time I spoke a word, my mouth was so dry, there was this kind of clicking noise. And I know that some people were looking around, what is this noise coming from? And my hands were shaking, so I kept them sort of like this. The next time was not so bad, and within a couple of years, I felt like I'd been doing it all my life.
So you were shy?
So I was a shy boy. I lived a lot of my childhood in North Africa. My father was in the army. Yeah. My father was a rather domineering personality, and I was somewhat frightened of him, but he was also very affectionate. My mother was also rather terrified of my father, so I was very close to my mother. I thought my father thought that I was too much of a mummy's boy. I remember when I was 8 years old, my father was out of the house, and I was already in bed. I got out of bed, and I tiptoed down the stairs, and I said to my mother, look, I think I'd rather be a girl. Could you arrange this for me? And I thought being a girl would just be a different wardrobe, you know what I mean? But remember, this is 1957 or whatever. My mother was horrified. She said, it was just like, I don't know. I mean, she was utterly horrified. And she said, get back into bed this minute before your father comes home. I never want to hear this again. I mean, she was shaking with fear or rage or... So anyway, the reason I wanted to be a girl was at my school, all the girls had interesting conversations and all the boys simply had fights. And I wanted to be in the conversation. Every time I passed the group of girls, they were all saying, and you know what he said to me next? And I think, yeah, I want to be... And I think maybe that was the first time I showed a tendency to be a novelist.
And when did you realize that you were a writer? When did you call yourself a
When
writer?
did I call myself a writer? There was one particular moment, I remember. I'd been writing stories, but I didn't dare call myself a writer. I must have been 22 years old, and one of my stories had been accepted for an American magazine, and it was published like a book 4 times a year. And I was living in Norwich, in England, in the east of England, and I heard the postman come, and I remember picking off the carpet this brown envelope, opened it, and there was this bright pink paperback, and it said, Gunter Grass, Philip Roth, Susan Sontag, Ijan Makjuan. And I thought, in such company. Yes. I've never been published in a book form at all, you know. And that was 1972, I think, and I probably never had a bigger moment of thrill in my writing life.
I would say that your latest novel, The Nutshell, is close on tone to your early stories, when you were called Ijan Makjuan. And so you were accused to write about obscene, dark, and perverse world. Did you enjoy shocking?
Well, I didn't think it was shocking, and many others that I gave my stories to didn't think it was shocking. I thought we live in a century of, well, the brothel scene in Joyce, in Ulysses. We've had The Naked Lunch, Genet. I mean, we've done all this. D.H. Lawrence, Lady Chatterley's Lover. Literature can go everywhere. That was my assumption. So only when the stories were put together in a book, and then they were reviewed in the newspaper, and people going, oh, I'm shocked. then I suddenly saw myself in a mirror, you know, people were shocked. But the literary people I showed the stories to thought they were just darkly funny.
But it was extreme, extravagant.
Yeah,
dark.
And unreal. So I was very much in the thrall of Kafka. I love the transformations that Kafka just allows himself. And what I especially love, and I say this about Kafka because it was a guide to me, even now with Nutshell, 50 years later. Grigol Samsa wakes one morning after a night of troubled dreams to find himself transformed into a giant beetle. And he sees his legs waving in the air. So there is the moment of completely unreal, completely impossible moment. That is the line you have to cross. The next sentence is the crucial one. Samsa says to himself, I'm going to be late for work. And suddenly you're back in the world of the mundane. And it's just a beautiful turn. It's like driving around a corner too fast, you know, but yet staying on the road. I've always admired that in Kafka. And so I think the ghost of Kafka is there in Nutshell.
Yeah.
So it does take me back to my early 20s when Kafka was, for me, the novelist, the writer who would liberate me from English obsession with class or with history and many other elements that later came back into my work.
In your later novels, your topics get broader. So you include love, family, politics, history in your prose. So how did you see yourself changing? How do you see that change? What happened to you?
What happened? So I wrote those 2 volumes of stories, then I wrote 2 short novels, and they were all quite claustrophobic.
Even for you?
Yeah. By the time I finished my novel, The Comfort of Strangers, I entered into a little crisis with fiction. I thought, I've written myself into such a tight corner here. So I moved into other forms. I wrote for television, and then I wrote a movie, a political movie, in which Mrs. Thatcher played a part. So that was just a sort of 2 or 3 year period where I did other work, and writing dialogue and getting involved in history and music, and these things were all there in the 70s when I was writing these stories, but they were not in the stories. They were in my mind, but they were not in the stories.
Svoje zamršena osjećanja Brian je protumačila kao još jednu potvrdu da je najzad stupila u arenu čudnih i varljivih emocija odraslih ljudi. A to je naravno bilo kao bogom dano za njene priče. Koja bi se bajka mogla pohvaliti tolikim protivrečnostima? Neobuzdana i praznoglava znatiželja nagnala ju je da pocepa koverat. Pisamce je pročitala u ulaznom holu. I mada joj je šokantnost poruke davala puno pokriće, i dalje se osjećala krivo. Rđavo je otvarati tuđa pisma, ali dobro je, neophodno da ona sve zna. Pismo je uvelo u igru nešto prizemno, nasilno, možda čak i kriminalno, nekakav tamni princip. I Brian ni uopšte nije sumnjala ni u tom uzbuđenju pred obiljem mogućnosti da njenoj sestri preti opasnost, te da će joj biti neophodna pomoć.
In Atonement, your masterpiece novel, there is a heroine. She is 13 years old. And by making a false accusation of rape, she ruins the lives around her. And she ruins her own life too. So you like to write about misunderstandings, about mistakes, about accidental situations that change crucially our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that moment you're looking for? That moment of transformation?
I think that most bad things that happen in life happen by surprise. Of course, you know, you might have a friend who has a long illness and the death comes, but even when the death comes, it's a surprise. That things can just happen to you out of the blue, and often these moments are when we discover who we are. They can be transfiguring moments in which you find out whether you're a coward or whether you have courage, whether you have good reactions, whether your spirit is the kind that can survive this, or whether, also crucially, whether your memory is the same of the event as everybody else's memory. Because actually one of the most extraordinary things we discover about ourselves is our memories are always helping us, not helping others.
Did you have those moments of transformation in your own life?
Yes, I've had moments in childhood. Some of them too personal to recount, had a lasting effect on me. one of which related to sexual abuse, which never happened but almost happened when I was very alone, lost in North Africa, in Libya. I got completely off the track where I should be and got attacked. Cumulatively, they make their marks, and those marks are not necessarily negative. I mean, they're also part of, you feel you understand more too. You understand more about yourself, about human nature, you become perhaps more resilient, maybe crucially more tolerant of others.
Džun je pročistila grlo. A psi koje sam jutros videla, gradonačelnik je tiho govorio. Isti psi, madam, psi Gestapoa. Vidite, ubrzo nakon svega toga sve se promenilo. Saveznici su se iskrcali u Normandiji. Kad su počeli da se probijaju, Nemci su postepeno povlačili jedinice na sever. Ovdašnja grupa nije radila ništa korisno, osim što je zastrašivala meštane, pa su među prvima otišli. Psi su ostavljeni i podivljali su. Nismo mislili da će opstati, ali preživeli su jedući ovce. Već 2 godine predstavljaju opasnost, ali ne brinite, madam. Danas popodne ta 2 psa će biti ubijena.
You write a lot about history,
Yes.
but not about the great historical events, but the way that history affects our lives. So, do you think that history is our fate?
We are the inheritors of our history. In my novels, I think of history almost as a character. It's not the total determinant of everything we are, but it's a strong force.
And evil force.
Yes.
In the Black Dogs, in the background of the novel, there is a Second World War, there is Nazism, and your heroine, June, she had traumatic and dramatic experience when she meets deadly wild dogs. And after that, her life becomes totally different. She turns to mysticism.
Yes.
She leaves her husband. So what happened, in fact? Why that metamorphosis?
In her view, she has confronted evil. Now, I don't believe in evil. I know that
you don't believe in evil?
No, I think when people talk of evil, they're talking of something supernatural. Whereas I think there is just...
What do you believe in?
Well, I believe that people can behave bravely and kindly and courageously, but they also can behave extremely badly and cruelly and viciously. But evil is, either it's a word we just reached for to intensify our sense of how bad people are, or we take it seriously. There is God and there is Satan. If you take that view, then evil is what Satan does. But that gets us off the hook. We really got to confront human behavior. It's not Satan, it's us. We are the ones who behave badly. But that's not June's view. When she sees those dogs, she feels she has confronted the spirit of evil. And of course, it's quite useful for a novelist to have an embodiment of all human bad behavior in these 2 dogs and what they were used for. But remember that at the end of Black Dogs, there is a kind of fantasy of those 2 dogs running off. They're going somewhere else in Europe. They've not been defeated. And they were heading this way, actually. They were heading into former Yugoslavia. Now perhaps they've come back and arriving in Italy. Who knows? But Europe has these ghosts, these phantoms, these demons.
It's what happens, in fact, in Europe. She looks like an old lady,
Yes.
coming to its end.
That's what my fetus says, yeah. Sclerotic, and yet full of, I think, I speak to you as someone who is full of regret that his country is leaving the European project. It's not perfect, but I still think it contains many very, very good social impulses. And it might be the best we have. We might have to accept it's the best we have. Our demons are surfacing again, partly in the name of populism, which might be quite harmless populism, but at its outer fringes, one sees some nasty xenophobia, some anti-Semitism, and the darker edges of nationalism.
Evropa proživljava duboku egzistencijalnu krizu. Podeljena je i slaba. Dok samozaljubljeni nacionalizam u raznim vidovima gucka isto ono ukusno piće. Poremećen sistem vrednosti, bujanje klice nacionalizma, imigranti, ljutiti iskoljeni dosadom prepušteni čamotinji. Države domišljatost iskazuju stvarajući novo sjajno oružje. Globalne korporacije gledaju kako da izbjegnu porez, a banke kako da za Božić nakrkaju što više miliona.
Let's say a word about Amsterdam.
Oh, yeah.
The novel which brought you Booker Prize, and that's my favorite one. I don't know why. Because it's all dark, from the beginning to the end. So there is no redemption.
No. It's also a comic novel.
It's a rather ironic novel.
Yeah, I mean...
it's black humor novel?
Yeah, it's a dark humoured novel in which two men plot each other's benign euthanasia. It was a sort of jeu d'esprit. I mean, I was surprised to win the Booker Prize with it. It's very short. I wrote it in a spirit of mischief and pleasure.
But you play a lot with the heroes in Amsterdam, what I like very much. So they betray their ideas and they trade them for social success,
yes,
for conformism, for financial safety.
Well, they're tested here. The editor of a famous newspaper suddenly has some photographs, and against all his own codes, he greedily publishes them because he wants advancement, he wants to be admired. At the same time, his oldest and best friend fails to intervene in a matter of sexual assault because he suddenly had an idea for the symphony he's writing, and art becomes more important in his life than life itself, and he fails to intervene. Also, it turns out that fate delivers him some punishment because all he does is end up rewriting Beethoven. Both men fall. So they've been through a kind of test. They've failed it, and they get their bottoms smacked by fate. But this is all within the frame of a comedy. It's a sort of comedy of manners, really.
Very dark comedy,
very dark.
About very dark manners.
I don't like bright comedies. I like my comedies dark.
Ubrzo su Garmonija i Lejna vozili nazad kroz centar grada. Svaki je bio zadubljen u svoje misli.
Upravo su mi rekli nešto vrlo zanimljivo, reče Garmoni posle izvesnog vremena. Štampa je pogrešno shvatila, kao i svi mi. Uopšte se ne radi o dvostrukom samoubistvu. Otrovali su jedan drugoga. Sipali su jednom drugom bog zna kakve droge. Reč je o uzajamnom ubistvu.
O Bože.
Ispostavilo se da ovde ima onih nadrilekara koji koriste zakon o eutanaziji do krajnjih granica. Ljudi im uglavnom plaćaju da im uklone ostarele rođake.
Baš čudno, reče Lejn.
Okrenuo se da pogleda kroz prozor. Kakva prijatna sređena ulica. Na ćošku se nalazio uredan mali kafić u kojem se verovatno prodaje droga.
Uzdahnuo je najzad. Holanđani i njihovi racionalni zakoni.
Tačno, reče Garmoni. Kad je reč o racionalnosti, oni obično teraju preko crte.
How to be moral in the immoral world?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, if everybody is good, then we would never discuss morals. If nobody
it's
ever...
not interesting for you as a writer?
No. Well, the Catholic French writer, Henri de Montholon, he said famously, happiness writes white, meaning that there's very little interest in a novel in which everybody behaves well all the time. Most of us novelists are interested in when things go wrong between people, because that's when we can test morals. That's otherwise there's no, without tests we don't have any measure of whether we are, what kind of people we are. So Amsterdam was as I say, a jeu d'esprit in which you could not actually get your best friend to Amsterdam and get him killed. I had many indignant letters from Dutch people, and I felt that they had read me too literally. But still, I just followed them, to their mutual death.
You follow them in evil.
Not evil, no, wrongdoing. Of two interlocking fates, and I just drove them to self-destruction.
What attracts you the most in human nature?
What I love in human nature, I mean, apart from kindness and all the wild and lovely experiences of love, but what I deeply honor in the human spirit is its capacity for the rational. I've written a lot of novels about the rational and how difficult it is to be rational. And also, if you try to be rational without the emotions, you're lost. Okay. You become a psychopath.
But you say one irrational thing about your writing. You say, the novel teaches me how to write.
One of the pleasures of writing is surprise. And the surprise at the little steps that you learn, or the surprise of a character walking onto your page at 10 o'clock in the morning and helping you out, or the surprise of an adjective, unexpected adjective arriving in front of a noun that gives you a little hit of pleasure. Those surprises are what really make the writing life worth living for me.
Yes, and do you know why do you write?
I think
what is the place inside of you where ideas come from?
If any of us set off to walk down the street for 300 meters, we will not be able to predict what we'll think about. Once you abandon yourself to the stream of thought, you might have a particular family problem, then you could stay focused. But normally, on your way to work, things float in and, a bit of sexual desire, a memory, an intention of what you must do when you get to where you're going, some scrap of this, some scrap of that. You can't predict it. Also, you don't even remember it afterwards. You take your hat off, you take your coat off, you get to work, you start talking. If someone said to you then, what were you thinking about as you walked to work on Monday 3 days ago? You have no memory, it's gone. And I think out of that silent stream come ideas. Suddenly, something pops up. And it has a kind of glow, a bit of sort of neon pulse to it. And if you don't write it down, you're lost, because it can be gone from you very, very quickly. But it haunts you. And then you sit down in silence and think, why? What is it in here? Who's talking? Why is this resonant? What possibilities? Or the other question is this offering me some kind of freedom? Because I think many writers are always looking at the beginning of their novels for some way of being free inside a story. So those are the elements, but I think novelists share those elements with other people, that we all are in this respect at the mercy of the flow of thought. As one philosopher put it to me, he said, the mind has a mind of its own. And I really like this, because there's a magic, accidental nature to the flow of thought. And suddenly, as if when you shake a kaleidoscope, there's an idea sitting there.